Customer experience, the big refresh. Are we experiencing CX 2.0, whose existence was threatened by the pandemic and has thankfully been rescued by technology? Is this just the beginning of change before AI completely takes over the responsibility of human delight? Has customer experience come out of BPOs and entered the boardroom? What are customer-centric organizations doing differently than the world? What role will data analytics play in a company's ability to provide outstanding customer experiences? These are just a few of the many questions any customer-facing organization of today experiences. Get answers to these and a lot more from our esteemed panelists. At Zendesk presents Mint India CX Summit, co-powered by Moengage, associate sponsor Gupshup. Customer experience, the big refresh. Are we experiencing CX 2.0, whose existence was threatened by the pandemic and has thankfully been rescued by technology? Is this just the beginning of change before AI completely takes over the responsibility of human delight? Has customer experience come out of BPOs and entered the boardroom? What are customer-centric organizations doing differently than the world? What role will data analytics play in a company's ability to provide outstanding customer experiences? These are just a few of the many questions any customer-facing organization of today experiences. Get answers to these and a lot more from our esteemed panelists. At Zendesk presents Mint India CX Summit, co-powered by Moengage, associate sponsor Gupshup. Customer experience, the big refresh. Are we experiencing CX 2.0, whose existence was threatened by the pandemic and has thankfully been rescued by technology? Is this just the beginning of change before AI completely takes over the responsibility of human delight? Has customer experience come out of BPOs and entered the boardroom? What are customer-centric organizations doing differently than the world? What role will data analytics play in a company's ability to provide outstanding customer experiences? These are just a few of the many questions any customer-facing organization of today experiences. Get answers to these and a lot more from our esteemed panelists. At Zendesk presents Mint India CX Summit, co-powered by Moengage, associate sponsor Gupshup. customer experience the big refresh? Are we experiencing CX 2.0, whose existence was threatened by the pandemic and has thankfully been rescued by technology? Is this just the beginning of change before AI completely takes over the responsibility of human delight? Has customer experience come out of BPOs and entered the boardroom? What are customer-centric organizations doing differently than the world? What role will data analytics play in a company's ability to provide outstanding customer experiences? These are just a few of the many questions any customer-facing organization of today experiences. Get answers to these and a lot more from our esteemed panelists. At Zendesk presents Mint India CX Summit, co-powered by MoEngage, associate sponsor Gupshup.
Good afternoon, a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to day 2 of the Mint India CX Summit, brought to you by Zendesk and co-powered by MoEngage and Gupshup. I'm Xenia, your host for day 2 as well, and it's such a pleasure that all of you have taken the time out of your busy schedules and joined us here. But I don't hope, I'm very certain that it's going to be a fulfilling day where we'll have new views and new avenues of doing business and recreating the whole CX experience. Now, in today's disruptive business environment, customer is truly king. In fact, a recent survey revealed that 57% organizations are aligning brand and customer experience goals, and they're also flagging them as top priority. And technology, as we all know, has been playing this very significant role in adapting to changing customer expectations and even evolving business needs across various sectors. This year's CX Summit is themed around a transformation that we are all witnessing in some form or the other, where customer experience is taking center stage for business across industry lines. On the opening day of the Mint CX Summit, we saw some exciting discussions on the changing face of CX and how the future enterprise can leverage the power of technology, big data, and even AI to transform the customer experience and make it more personalized and certainly far more engaging. We will start today's proceedings with a special opening keynote from Mr. Shalil Gupta, CBO at Mosaic Digital, and this is titled From Expectations to engagement, staying ahead.
Hey, hi Xenia, how are you?
Hi, Shalil. Good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Absolutely, as sharp as you can see, in office, pretty
Yes.
much on the stage.
Fantastic. Over to you.
Thank you, Xenia. Thanks a lot, guys. So, friends, thanks a lot for joining us today. I think you had an interesting day one yesterday, full of actions where we had wonderful speakers talking about how customers and the evolving technology are interacting together. I think today I'm going to spend next 20 minutes just to allude onto a journey, which is basically taking customers' expectations to customer engagement. And it's a journey which probably most of the people are in the transition mode to travel, but I'm just trying to allude most of the components which are important for us to understand the journey itself. But to start with, I'm looking at my team. Would be sharing my presentation here. Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm just hoping that people are able to see my screen. Beating the market. I think fair to say, if I'm talking to a board member, the biggest topic in the board member theme perspective is beating the market. If I'm talking to a CEO, beating the market, the big theme there. If I'm talking to a business head, I'm looking at a beating the market as a part of it. So most of the time, the energy which we are now utilizing is how do we leverage market and beat the market more and more. When I say beat the market, I need to stay ahead of the market. I think it's important to understand that it's clear that the success does not just come from shiny new tools. So we have been discussing about tools, we have been discussing about many of the technology interventions which would help us, but it comes from breaking old habits actually. I think that's where the intersection and largely from a customer's experience perspective would come into play. When you actually allude to the next part of it, so what I said is let's have a discussion between Alexa and the CEO itself. So one of the questions where the CEO is likely to be getting disrupted, I think the CEO asked the question to the Alexa. Instead of Alexa responding with one answer, I think Alexa responded saying you are already disrupted. While 20% of the margin is already taken for you, and as far as you were frozen for the last 20 years. I think now look at this picture and you will understand that how fast market is moving. The market playbook, which consists of operating models, customers playbook, and your partners and alliances playbook, has largely changed. If you're following the same playbook today, you will not be able to get a success out. I think you have to look at very differently how customer experience should become a customer engagement for that purpose. So the discussion is, my face-to-face sales force versus my e-commerce business, my marketing engine, my messaging, my content. What is the right balance between the two? I think that's a very important question we are looking at it. The story revolves on three pillars. One, definitely on a technology revolution. You cannot do an exponential scale growth in your organization, whether you're a B2B or a B2C organization, without the technology intervention. The second, there are regulatory priorities which are coming into place. So data privacy, data regulation, data sovereignty is all now, probably at the face of us today. And the dynamic customer expectations, which is changing, ever changing, in fact. So around these three pillars, what's happening in the CMO perspective and the chief marketing officer, and the staggering statistics which comes out for us. One is 80% of time, decision is already taken before any sales guys actually knock the door of a customer. I mean, this is an important statistics because the effectiveness of the sales team actually to sell product and solution into the market, or actually bind to some of the products and solution you're looking at it, the decision by a customer is already being taken. I think this is a staggering importance from CMO office perspective. How important for us to understand and engage with my customers. If I am not doing so, that I have only 20% chance of winning. 80% would be some my competition would be winning. And if this is the case, how do we delve deeper and deeper into it? Second part which comes into play is, average head start. You can actually at max take is 6 months. The barriers of entry in the digital is very, very low. You do something new today, your competition is going to replicate it next day. So at max, you only have a 6 months of head start as the next things comes up. When you're having a 6 months of head start, you're looking at two things bringing on board. One is agilization. When I say agilization, it's important to understand that your design, the very basic nature, should be quite agile, nimble, flexible. And at the same time, you're looking at innovative. Now, why agilization and innovative? Innovative means the momentum of innovation you would need to create inside the organization to deliver the right kind of enablement for your customers' experiences. You are not just innovating once, you have to keep on innovating ever. And that's the pace of innovation comes in. So once you build up your agilization and once you build up your innovatum, I think the two words will keep you ahead of the market there and beat the market. Some of the statistics we observe is advanced marketing and sales capabilities. If you are doing it today with a, let's say, a traditional mix up there, you probably will grow at 30% faster. But if you are building some digital capabilities, you intend to grow 5x faster. There is a huge exponential difference in the terms of capabilities which you are building today and the capabilities you're building on a digital perspective. So some aspects of statistics for us to ponder on. How we do it is a shift which we are looking at it. And these shifts are very important. One is uninformed buyer. Today, none, whether in the B2C environment, your customers, consumers, your employees, your partners and suppliers are not uninformed. You're not creating just an awareness perspective. You're actually looking at people are completely aware what the solutions look like, what the pros and cons are, and the access to the information is so widespread today across mobile devices to your other devices that your customers are digitally informed. While customers are digitally informed, you're not looking at push marketing. You're not looking at marketing which will go and create your experiences. You're looking at pull. And when pull is happening, you are engaging with the customer. Because at the time of the push, it is a one-way traffic. But at the time of the pull, you have a two-way traffic coming in. And I think if you look at this, a two-way street, the pull creates the integration with your customers and thus push you towards the engagement model. While offline channels are still very important, and we have seen time and again the offline channels, online channels have gone to offline channel and offline channel has gone to online channel. But think about this, consumer-like. So anywhere you're looking at as building your marketing platform, building your customer experiences, you have to think only one way, which is think like a consumer. And if your consumer could be a B2B customer buying huge amounts of machinery, let's say from you, still the same expectations are there as a consumer would have it. Going forward, you're looking at hardly data. I think, most of the time we were looking at some creatives coming out in the market, building some messaging there. But today it's like real-time personalization. Open your Netflix today, open your Amazon Prime today. The first screen would be very different from what your family member would be having. And if you are able to get your content right on the upfront, I think that's called mass personalization. Imagine the kind of compute which will be going behind the scene just to get one content which is relevant to you when you just click on the app button. I think that's where the real-time personalization comes into play. Looking at measurement, we were really measuring the ROIs, we were measuring the customers' expectations, experience. I think they were like periodical in nature, no more the scenario. Today, I think if you look at the platforms which are like Uber, Ola, or Airbnb or any other, you're actually continuously measuring your ecosystem. You're measuring your driver's aptitude or attitude towards the customer, and you can mark them between 1 to 4. Basis on the rating, you're actually trying to say that is this a good driver or a bad driver, an ugly driver. And I think that's where the continuous operations come into play. Where you were largely on the intuition base, today you're on analytics base. And the power of intuition plus analytics is way beyond in any other perspective if you look at it. Very important to understand, guys, is where is my journey comes in. Largely I have seen almost 65 to 70% of the spend when you are looking at going into the market is towards the sales part of it. But the journey is just not the sales. Let me just allude to that infinity curve which we are now driving across the organization. First one, latent need and trigger. How are you building your latent need and triggers and understanding those and passing on that message across to the customers? Then who could be my possible partners? Where should I be buying? Which product I should be looking at it? Then comes the journey, which is comparisons. And most of the time I have seen today that while even if you are an offline store, and suppose you're buying an AC today, your customers are comparing that AC on an online channel and saying, what is the pricing? And which is the next best product I would actually look forward for. Then we have considerations. Consideration is largely one or two. You actually nail it down and say that, okay, fine, I'm going to look at these two players into market, these two products, these two solutions, these two enterprises, and move on very quickly to evaluate between the two. The journey between evaluate and consideration is just few seconds, guys. You don't have much time between the two. If you look at the further, you actually buy. When you're actually buying, you're actually moving to judge. And this is a very typical behavior of any customer. If you look at it, once they have bought it, within 5 minutes of consumption of that product or a solution, there is a judgment passed by the customer. And where is this judgment passed on? Some social media channel. Hey guys, wonderful product, really liked it, amazing. Or somebody could say that, hey guys, this is pathetic, I didn't like it, and it's really not convenient product itself. So your judgment is passed. While judgment is there, customer really have an experience in the journey. That judgment can't be treated as an experience overall, because customer will use it for some time, get adoption done on that, and then the experience will come. Now, once you look at this experience playing an important role, you're actually looking at reorder, becoming an advocate, your self-service comes into play. Now, if you see this, there are 4 or 5 pointers pre-sales and 4 or 5 pointers which are post-sales. And I think most of the time, the customer journey is this infinity loop till the time you create customers as your advocates. I think it's very important to understand how do I balance this journey altogether. Coming to that is very important. Your win rate can increase by 5 to 10% if you intervene there. Your share can increase by 5 to 10%. You're actually increasing the CSAT score by 10 to 20%. And most importantly, your churn could be actually less by 10 to 15%. And more importantly, your cost is going to be down by 10 to 20%. If you have mapped the journeys, and there are thousands of journeys for customers available, you need to dump it down to a journey lake, find out through an AI and ML based and algorithm based, which are the top 10 journeys I should be taking it forward. The results are in front of you, some of the percentage which I'm giving it to you. But I think what we are not doing a justice to this journey is we are not focusing on the overall journey. We are largely focusing on the left-hand side. I think there has to be a big focus on the right-hand side as well. When we are looking at moving forward, just to give you an example, this is when I was visiting a Vodafone office at one point of time. It's called Marketing Insights and Listening Lab. They're actually creating this lab where they have got 6 odd screens. Who's talking about their products versus their competition? Who are the influencers? What kind of quotations and sensitive analysis is coming? What is the radar doing? And there is a team of 7-8 people who are actually runtime delivering these insights back to the customers on the social media platform. This is just for the social media. Imagine the kind of analytics you really need to adhere to drive that thing out. But more importantly, all of these dashboards can be completely automated. I think technology has evolved over the period of time. You can get rid of all the 6 screens and completely automate the process of actually reaching out to the customers in a right personalized manner. I'm not saying perfect. Nothing is perfect, guys. But I would say that when you are right, you're continuously right, which means you're evolving over the period of time. And once you start evolving, your customers will become more loyal to you. The customer's relationship will become much better. And I think your brand and your product, your solution attractiveness would be much far better than in that case. Guys, how to do that is very important. I think the shifts are very important. One is the tool side of it. So one is live chat, callback tools, dynamic pricing tools, research and content there. Content is today God, guys. In fact, if you ever want to do anything today, your content in the journey has to be rightly relevant for the customers. And it's a very important task and a very complicated task to be done. You actually need to do simulations and sand modeling around the board. You have to do a guided tool, recommendations engines, and you're actually looking at solutions which are value management, B2B to C e-commerce, co-innovations. You saw the difference between using the tools and what they drive for the organization. And when they're driving these types of value for the organization, important part is that the human support to fully digital is a 18% returns to shareholders, reduce cost by 40 to 60%. So it's a game to play to win, guys. And I think a win is not only for an organization such as yourself, the win is for customers as well. The win is for employees as well. And the win is for partner alliances. If you see the full value chain of your organization, I think the win is across the board if we have right mix of what kind of experiences we are enabling for customers and what kind of engagement we are building on it. Moving ahead, guys, is a very important question, right? Finding the right digital balance. It's important to understand that emerging battle will be the fought on the smart combining of the digital and the non-digital transformation. Only digital will not work, only physical will not work. I think what is the right mix, if you look at it, is coming on board. So one is mapping the journey, alternative paths if you have it. Relationship goes deeper. You really need to build a much better value-driven relationship than just the experience, which is more interactive in nature. You're looking at complex journeys involving more individuals. I think whether you are in a B2B, you're still dealing with people. Whether you are in a B2C, you're still dealing with the people. Understanding the people and the behavior there is very important. What kind of journey an individual would like to have is a complex way to look at it. Channels, then mapping it to the journeys and to stages, I think is very important. Always a big question comes in, what annoys the most to the customer? Don't waste my time. And what annoys most to the sales is also the same thing. Don't waste my time. I think if you keep the litmus test that am I at some point of time delivering the value of time to my customers and within my organization, I think you have a right balance. So put that litmus test across your board, and you will find the balance coming across on your organization. So speed, transparency, and expertise are the basic pillars of any engagement you want to create for your customers. Think about it. If I am buying a machine and within that machine, I want to talk to some expert, it should be on a button tap. But if I am buying an apparel, even then, I will really need to talk to an expert today. I think that defines it, but don't delay it. You need to be very, very, very velocity oriented and create a transparency of the journey for the customers. I'd like to end here, guys. Thank you very much for the time and attention. I hope I was able to set the context for CX second day today, but back to Xenia, to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Gupta. I think from agilization to creating momentum to maintaining corporate authenticity with customers and keeping them informed, you also spoke about the shift in customer engagement experience to a pull from a push model. And I think most importantly, you closed with finding the right balance, which really is the key to creating a memorable customer experience. Thank you for some very interesting insights in your opening keynote. And I'm going to ask you to stay with me because, of course, you will be leading the next conversation, the fireside chat on the agenda that we're really looking forward to. So please stay with me while we get all set to introduce our amazing guests for the fireside chat.
I'll be there.
Okay, so let's move on to the next event of the day. Like I said, this is a fireside chat on conversational messaging, driving CX with a robotic efficiency. Now, chatbots or intelligence softwares that communicate with users via voice or via text messages, we all know have been around for several years now, but they shot into limelight in the wake of the pandemic when call centers, contact centers were shut down across the world and businesses were looking for various alternative ways to attend to this stream of queries and requests from their customers. In the recent past, of course, they have emerged as very, very powerful tools to improve the customer experience at various touch points across the customer journey, also offering instant gratification to queries and concerns, and also personalizing the CX in real time. Mr. Gupta will, of course, be driving this fireside chat, and it's my pleasure to welcome our participants for the chat, Mr. Birut Sheth, CEO of Gupshup, and Mr. Rakesh Gupta, National Customer Service Manager, Panasonic Life Solutions, India. Welcome, and Mr. Gupta, over to you.
Thank you, Xenia. Thanks a lot. And, very, very warm welcome, Birut, to you and Rakesh to yourself as well. Thanks for joining. It's an honor to have you on the platform today.
Thanks for having us here.
I Thanks, Rakesh. In fact, the first 20 minutes was setting the context, and the journey was actually starting from expectations to engagement, and I talked about that, how the expectation. One thing which came out very clearly and time and again, that the best engagement is conversation based. Okay. I think that fair to say, there has been a 75 years of study done for almost 120 to 200 participants into, where their journey from being birthed to the really old age for 75 years. It is the largest research program being done. And they found out that the only way the human happiness happens is through social interactions. Having good friends, having good family, having good people in business, in personal life is the only way the happiness comes through. And it's a very astonishing, surprisingly, because it should be very obvious to us, because thousands and thousands of years we have been a social animal, in fact. But fair to say, the conversation has to start. I was just hoping, Beirut, I could start my conversation here with the bot here, and that should have been taken care. But someday we will do that.
Well,
I would say
you may not. You don't know whether this is my bot speaking or me in person.
True, very true, actually. I mean, this is one of the questions. I remember, guys, there was days when chat used to happen, and you can recognize that this is not the human I'm intersecting, but I'm also talking to a chatbot. But today, finding that difference is actually next to impossible. It will automatically feel that I'm talking to some human. I think, thanks to the technology which has been brought in. But I will start with you, Rakesh. I think, the journey, like I said, there are 3 E's which are very important. One is knowing the customer expectations. Second E is creating that experience for the customer. But more important E is the engagement, right? And, we have to drive ourselves from expectations to engagement. While you're looking at, Panasonic and the life solutions which you are into, and you are now delivering some extraordinary experiences for your customers, enlighten us as to how you have thought about it. What has you done at your organization, and a little bit maybe talk about from the function which you are now heading.
Yeah. So hi, Sahil. As you rightly said, COVID-19 has indeed changed the customer experience of CX in far more ways where we could imagine. While it has already reshaped, the business landscape, becoming the customer services manager are still trying to deploy the strategies, not just for the present, but for the next decade as well, because it's going to change the complete future as well. The pandemic has forced us to think new ways of doing the things, modifying existing practices, transforming the entire ecosystems, and that too for a considerable length of time. It is not going to be 100-meter sprint. It is going to be a marathon. So we'll have to find the consumers are shifting to new ways of doing the things, more convenient, affordable, and most importantly, the accessible. So we at Panasonic Life Solutions, as the pandemic hit, as rightly said, our contact centers were shut down. So we were looking out for the mediums where we can engage with our consumers, even when with our, where our contact centers were shut down. So we implemented a couple of automizations and interactive chatbots, wherein we were able to get in touch with our consumers as well when contact centers were shut down.
And while you implemented your, let's say, conversational chatbots at your end, what was the design you were thinking? Like, you thought about a design earlier, what you need to get out of it, or it was more of, let's do a pilot first, see what the results are, and then expand it? How was the thinking going on inside the organization?
So the pandemic doesn't give us too much of time to plan our strategies and then implement it off. So when we faced it, all of a sudden it came back to us, and we with the help of Gupshup, we implemented our chatbots, and it was mostly we were inclined to make it simple. That how simple we can make it for a normal consumer, a normal layman. In India, the consumers doesn't stay only in class A towns or the metros. We do have consumers in B class towns or C class towns, or even in the remote up countries as well. So we defined or designed our platform so that it can be suitable to interact with even a layman.
Got it. So Rakesh, when you said servicing your customers and increasing the touch points through a conversation while the pandemic, we were locked down, contact centers were not up and running. Today, I think largely the world has opened up, right? The globe has opened up. People have got vaccinated. I'm sure the strategy is to continue with the conversation bot and so on. Share some, what's your benefits, some numbers at your end, how many people were there, and then suddenly you have a conversation, how many customers you are actually servicing today. Give me some, analysis at your end, which will talk about the results as such.
So, Shail, when we implemented this, conversational chatbots or interactive platforms almost a year back, and it has turned wonders for us. We are happy to share that more than 25% of our current service request volumes are being handled by the chatbot. So it's a whopping figure. 25% of saving in terms of manpower. We were able to save around 10 executives at our contact center, which boils down to saving around ₹500,000 per month. So it is a huge, immense cost which we were able to save down in our contact centers. Besides that, it has led to reduction in the telecom costs as well. Because with the pre-pandemic toll-free cultures where we were paying for the consumers, we were paying for the consumers to call us at the toll-free number. So we saved on telecom cost 25%, and on and off today as we speak, around 1,000 consumers per day interact with us over our interactive platform with the help of
Excellent,
Gupshup
Rakesh.
team.
Thank you, Rakesh. I'm going to come back to you a little bit later as well, but I want to go to Berut. Berut, I think, Rakesh is using the Gupshup solutions today. And, while he's talking all good about the Gupshup, how they have been using, Gupshup would have gone through a journey yourself, right? First of all, congratulations being a unicorn and recently raised a lot of capital, many congrats from our side as well. But
Thank you.
this journey would have been complicated. This journey would have been difficult, challenging as well. Talk about a little bit about your journey. Then I'll come to the next journey for you. How do you see the Gupshup evolving the next part of it? So there are two questions, but the first one is with you.
Yeah, I think that's true. Gupshup has had a bit of a roller coaster journey, but I think that's par for the course for any entrepreneurial sort of effort. I think we've been in business for about 12 to 15 years, and for a lot of that time, I think we didn't have funding, and we had to sort of build our own business in a very scalable way. And we sort of took we really sort of hunkered down, focused on innovating, building out the product, focusing on customer value, and so on. And I think today Gupshup has built a reputation for being very innovative, for being first to the market with new solutions, advanced capabilities, and so on, right? And the whole messaging industry itself is evolving, right? It used to be previously just basic SMS-driven messaging, but now it is moving from plain one-way notifications to two-way conversations, right? And this migration to sort of conversational messaging is where Gupshup has been sort of the earliest to innovate. We were the first global partner with WhatsApp, right? And today we are one of the largest providers of WhatsApp connectivity in India. We were the earliest with bot platforms. We were the earliest with maybe Instagram capability, with GIP, and so on, right? So I think, and then earlier this year, so we've been launching these innovative solutions, and then the pandemic sort of accelerated a lot of this digital transformation. So our business experienced a lot of growth, and early this year, we ended up attracting very substantial investments, right? We raised about $350 million earlier this year. And that's great because one, it recognizes sort of the great thought leadership and market leadership that Gupshup has established. And second, it gives us resources to achieve our vision. And we have this very ambitious vision of conversational messaging, a world in which every business is going to enable, conversational experiences with their consumers. So I think there's a lot to do here. We are, investing even more heavily into product and innovation and so on. We are very grateful for customers like, Rakesh and Panasonic, and many others like that as well. So, we're just busy at work and very excited about what lies ahead.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I am very confident about it. But related question, Beirut, how do we get this? Earlier getting a conversation right through a machine has been a big challenge. Is it still a challenge, or how do you implement this conversation, which is right in nature? I mean, it could be risky as well. I may just inform something to the customer which may be untrue, not true, etc. How we build accuracy while we are doing a conversation, and also answer the question, what's the future lies?
I think, see, when we use the word conversation, the good thing is, as humans, we know what conversations are because we've been doing it since we were toddlers, right? Since babies and so on. On the other hand, it also sets a very high bar because what humans do and how we naturally converse, like right now, is not easy for computers to do just yet, right? So I think it's going to be a long journey, and I don't think we should talk about is it there yet or not, right? That's not the point. I think the right way to think about it, it's a process, it's a journey. It's a little bit like when you hire a new employee into the company, right? That person is not going to be fully productive on day one, right? They're going to go through an onboarding process, a training process. They're going to learn in one area, learn another area, and gradually you give them more and more responsibility. And maybe a few months or few years down down the road, they have developed all of this advanced capability. So I think when we think about conversational experiences, that's the right way to think about it. In fact, if you heard what Rakesh said earlier, right, they wanted to keep it really simple, right? And I think it's important to start with something simple and easy, and yet it's already delivering a substantial efforts, right? Now, in fact, I know we are working on sort of an active roadmap to enable more capabilities and features that I'm sure he might share. But the point is, if you do it in a step-by-step way, you're learning, and you're learning based on customer feedback, what works, what doesn't, right? So it's not just that somebody, in their infinite wisdom is developing some capability that may or may not be appreciated by the customer. I think you just put it out there, you develop it, and so on, right? And if I can use one analogy to explain, right, this is, conversational experiences are a very significant trend. It's as significant as let's say the mid 90s when the web came about, right? And when the web came about, the earliest websites were like one-page websites. In fact, many people would go, on their website would have a phone number saying, please call us at this number, which is sort of missing the point, right? Because consumers are coming there to talk to you and, enable it. But gradually people realize it's a digital storefront where you can enable people to shop, to look up information, find things, get support, all that kind of, and today websites 25 years later, we're still finding better and better ways to build richer and better websites. Okay. In the same way now, with the rise of smartphones and messaging apps and so on, conversational experiences now are the new digital storefront. This is where consumers are looking for businesses. They want to chat with businesses as easily as chatting with friends and family, right? So businesses have to start building these conversational experiences, and it's going to be hard and it's going to take long. And we think, it might even take years, maybe a decade or two, because AI, conversational AI and voice and languages and so on, there's so much richness yet to come. But nonetheless, I think it's important to get started, to take incremental steps along the way. It's a journey. And I think as people get better, right, the important point is, even with simple things, there's huge ROI, like Rakesh was explaining. And I think as you keep adding more and more capabilities, it'll keep multiplying, and also businesses will learn more about what works, what doesn't, right? Because ultimately what works for one business may or may not work for another, and everybody has to discover, right? Like in Panasonic, the products that they are selling, do customers like conversing with a chatbot, and which aspects can you put on a chatbot, which ones you cannot yet, and so on. So I think all of that learning has to happen. The important thing here is to get started, and get started now.
Sure. I'm going to continue the discussion of journey and the risk which we are taking with Rakesh. Rakesh, I mean, I would say your competition is the human conversation, right? And as the people are evolving, I'm sure while you're using the bot for chatbots, but somewhere you would have thought about it, how would it flare up against the human conversation, right? So maybe talk about your journey in your organization, and how are you now planning the next journey in your organization?
So what happened, Shail, when we implemented these chatbots or conversational interactions, yes, there were challenges. We came up with, we were not aware what consumer would be asking from a bot or what would be his expectations. So, when we implemented this, we implemented it with a hybrid model, so wherever a chatbot is not able to answer the consumer queries for a couple of times, or there are 2 or 3 wrong inputs done by the consumer, nowadays people doesn't want to write too much. They want to select 1 2 3 4, press 1 2 3 4, and then get their job done. As I mentioned, it has to be simple. Nobody wants to type long sentences. So we implemented it with button mechanisms like press 1 2 3 4. So if they are not able to convey their a consumer is not able to convey his word or his verbatim to the system, we parallelly had a agent handover capabilities as well. So during the working hours, we can hand over the chats to the to the agents, live agents who have been working. It evolved in duration. In last 1 year, the system has evolved a lot. We are now able to get that what are the most commonly asked queries by the consumer, so that we can put it on number one, or what are the things which, and a consumer can ask anything. So that is how it has evolved. The system has evolved. We have been doing this to increase the satisfaction. Once a consumer gets immediate reply to what he is asking for, it brings in more satisfaction as well. So it is evolving, still evolving.
Yeah, Rakesh, it is evolving. Just a small, is there a shift you can talk about, like 30% shifted to chatbot versus 70% still agent based, or it's a vice versa? What's the kind of pivot you have taken?
More and more consumers now want to interact with chatbots because it gives them freedom of the time also. We as Indians doesn't want to listen to the jingles or ringtones of the contact center anymore, or keeping on waiting. So more and more people, and besides that, it gives the freedom also. Contact centers are working maximum from 8 to 8, or during the office hours, but this gives them freedom to, even if a consumer wants to register a service request at midnight, he can do it with the help of a chatbot, or he can do it with the help of conversation. So it is helping, and more consumers are going to shift to this platform in coming times, that we are sure of.
Okay, got it. So Rakesh, I understand. While pandemic has taught us way to move on a digital side, and largely, when only 10% of the people were visiting internet banking during the pandemic, and especially on the lockdown, it was 90% people on the internet, and they have never come back. They're still on the internet, though they can still go to branches today. But I think people have opted the convenience versus physically interacting with the banking community. So there are enormous scale benefits which are there, because timing is a benefit, scale is a benefit, accuracy is a benefit, and cost is a benefit. Obviously, we can't equate such kind of cost once you've started doing it. Would you be looking forward moving the same chatbots into more functions in your organization going forward? And which are they? Very briefly, if I may want to know that.
Yes, we are seriously looking forward to extend the scope of the chatbots now. Currently, we are using it only for the service request registration, but soon we are going to extend it to our channel partners. So with the help of chatbots, they can see their account balances, they can see what are the recent billings done to them, what is the status of their credit note, what is the status of their shipment delivery. So we are going to enormous exposures. We are going to integrate it with the Oracle ERP, which we are working for. So there are enormous options available, and we are working out on them very aggressively to increase our previously we were set to increase the consumer satisfaction. Now we are looking forward to integrate it with our channel partner modules to get them online.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Rakesh. I think best of luck for the next set of journey to start in your organization. Birut, I wanted to note a couple of things from you. One, one vector where the complexity grows is culture, different languages, context. And when Gupshup goes global, the cultural and complexities would be very different. The second vector, which is important, is interoperability. So you will be looking at, first of all, integrating with monolithic technology as well, and also integrating with the new age tech platforms, which are hyperscaled across the board. And third, benefits. The third vector is benefits. And I think largely we are seeing today the scale benefits, and we are also seeing the cost benefits. Give us some output on what are the other benefits an organization have. Guys, we are time constrained, so be brief, be short as well. But over to you, Bill.
Yeah, I think, all right, just very quickly, there's many many directions and dimensions that it could grow in. Again, like the web analogy, just like websites are very rich and powerful, I think even with bots, right? So one is it works across the entire journey from pre-purchase to purchase to post-purchase and support, right? So that's one aspect of it. The other is, like you mentioned, different languages or even text versus voice. So it could be different channels and different medium. Certainly, in terms of regional differences as well, we work in many different countries and or in different languages. Even within India, there's so much diversity. So we're enabling a lot of these capabilities. Some of them are structured experiences with buttons like Rakesh was saying, or some of them have conversational AI capabilities. There's a lot of diversity there. And so on. And then in terms of benefits, I mean, certainly, I think first and foremost is, for any business, it's growth, right? Growth in terms of either acquiring more customers, converting more customers, getting them to buy more, getting them to cross-sell, upsell, and so on, right? So sort of the marketing and commerce part of it is a big portion of it. Then the other element is support, which then gets to cost, like Rakesh was saying, right? It can save money. It can, but most importantly, it provides customer delight, right? This whole thing is about customer engagement. If you engage the customer well through a conversation, they will buy more, they'll interact with you more, and they'll be happy. Even when they have a problem, if you can resolve it quickly, it still becomes an opportunity to delight the customer, right? So and then of course the financial benefits are immense as well. The ROI is already baked into the more messaging that, for example, Rakesh does. That means they're saving more from calls and other things as well. And then of course integrations with existing backend systems, whether they're e-commerce systems, banking systems, and inventory management systems, and so on. So all of that is we try to pre-build and pre-package and make it easy. Gupshup's goal as the platform is to hide all this complexity, right? To take care of it out of the box. And then, of course, help the businesses customize it a little bit to their requirements and then launch it very quickly so that there's great time to value as well as great financial benefits along the way. So it's a very exciting journey. There's a lot to be done, but there's a lot of opportunity as well.
Perfect. I think we have come to the last. Already my team has indicated I have overshooted the time. Guys, Rakesh, if you have to advise your peers in 1 or 2 words, what would you advise?
Let's go for it. It will, enhance the consumer satisfaction just like anything. Go for it.
Got it. Let's do it. Instead of let's do it from a Nike, let's go for it. I think, Gupshup, you should put that tagline in your perspective.
Absolutely. Let's go with Panasonic, we'll say.
and last question, always a curiosity question for me. Why Gupshup? What's in it there? How did you come out with the name?
Well, as you know, Gupshup means chit chat, and it's very obvious for a company that's in the messaging business. But with Western audiences, I like to joke that they should remember Gupshup as the next famous word from the language that gave them yoga, nirvana, and Kama Sutra.
Fantastic, Beru. Thanks a lot. I love the name, let me tell you. And more importantly, when we are an argumentative Indians, Gupshup makes perfect sense. I have never seen, addabaji being done without the arguments happening. We can solve world's best problems on the Gupshup. Thanks a lot for being there, guys, with us. It's an honor to have you both, Rakesh, yourself, sharing your experience. And Beirut, I think one of the best organizations I've ever seen evolving over the period of time and delivering the direct value to the customers. So bringing Gupshup to us, thanks a lot for that. And having you on the platform, it's an honor.
Thank you. Really enjoyed this Gupshup. Yeah.
Brilliant. Same here.
Thank you. Thank you, Shaju. Thank you, Beirut.
Bye-bye.
Back to Xenia to you. Thank you.
Yes,
Xenia.
thank you so much, Mr. Shalil Gupta. What an exciting discussion that was. Thank you for offering extracting some great insights. I think conversational messaging will continue to be the preeminent primary brand touch point and also the face of the business. As you all were speaking, I couldn't help but thinking that it's 2021, almost the end of it. And this form of transformation, which is conversational messaging, is growing almost, it's like on steroids. And I think you clearly Yes, and you clearly outlined through this conversation that the difference between brands employing good and great auto conversations lies in, having cool technology that's going to be truly frontier breaking to make more intelligent, but more importantly, engaging gupshup happening. So thank you
Yeah.
very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Xenia, for the gupshup. Cheers. Take care.
See you. Okay, so welcome to another very, very awaited conversation. And I'm going to open this conversation by talking about a very interesting topic that we've been speaking about for a day and a half now, which is the expectations of the customer, which you'll agree with me has changed with the rise of big data, with social media, and also the pace of this transition that we've been talking about, which has been very much faster than what was expected. It has sort of opened up the gaps in the customer service process. Shoppers today use a mix of digital touchpoints across the buying journey, and they also expect the same customer experience across, be it online and offline. The next event for the day is a panel discussion that's titled Omni Consumption Driving Success on All Fronts. This conversation will delve into the importance of an integrated customer experience with a brand across all customer touchpoints, be it online or be it offline. Time to invite our moderator for this discussion, Mr. Gautam Srinivasan, senior journalist.
Thank you so much, Zinia. Indeed, we've got lots to talk about, and we heard from the last fireside chat inputs coming in about how bots are changing the experience. And as you mentioned, the channels of communications are opening up between brands and customers. So it's there that we need to figure out the strategies of driving success on all fronts. We'll take it forward from here. Thank you, Zinia. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Gautam Srinivasan, and welcome to the final panel discussion of the Mint India CX Summit. Our talk is titled Omni Consumption Driving Success on All Fronts. Now, to set some context, in the aftermath of the pandemic, online sales are booming, and consumers who were, say, shopping in brick and mortar stores have come out of their comfort zone to interact with their favorite brands online. And this is not the twist, but the continuation of a growth story. The early 2000s saw rapid adoption of internet connectivity, and consumers had unprecedented access to information, which they used to research products and services, compare prices, access store information, and of course, write reviews. Now, this has led to the rise of connected commerce. During the pandemic, even brands that had not created an online path to purchase had to do so almost overnight as lockdowns were imposed across the country, sparking a sort of a revolution in online retail. Now, in this disruption, the need to be omnipresent is no longer a luxury. Retailers need to offer their customers a unified experience across online and offline channels in order to stay ahead of their agile competitors. Now, the digitally informed customer expects the same level of service across channels and businesses, and it needs to meet service and efficiency challenges across both online and offline channels at every step of the customer journey. So, today's dialogue turns the spotlight on this very aspect of CX, where our panel of industry leaders will discuss the importance of an integrated omni-channel experience. So let me introduce our lineup of speakers for this session, starting with Vasudeva Rao Mannaluri, who's the Enterprise Sales Director at Zendesk. We also have with us Uma Talreja, industry veteran who has spearheaded marketing, e-commerce, and CX for several top brands, including Shoppers Stop, Raymond's, and Burger King, and currently advises startups for marketing and growth strategies. Next up, we have Muhammad Ali, who's the head of products at Delivery. Hari Talapalli is also with us. He's the executive director and CEO at Call Health. And joining him is Ankit Tomar, co-founder and CTO at Bizongo. And completing the lineup is Jayawan Deshpande, COO and founder at Eases. We have an exciting lineup of speakers at the intersection of e-commerce, omni-channel marketing, and of course, the next frontier of this revolution that we are witnessing. Thank you everyone for joining in. Now let's divide this conversation into two parts. One focuses on enterprise success stories and the lessons learned. And the second part could be on the broader themes for CX, which includes bridging the phygital divide, supply chain tuning, and the possibilities that are offered by automation, something which was covered in the fireside chat. So Vasu, we'll start with you. Now, Zendesk is a service-first CRM company that works across 160 countries to build software that is designed to improve customer relationships for large and small business. Now, considering you are the champions of customer service, tell us how large enterprises can create a competitive advantage for themselves using CX. Now, I read some interesting global customer stories, including the American consumer electronics company Tile, where your partnership resulted in a near 300% ROI on CX investment. So could you share any India-specific case studies to this effect, especially in the context of many successful companies here being unable to keep up with the rapid pace of innovation, or say being blindsided by unanticipated market challenges like the pandemic?
Hey, sure. Thank you so much, and thanks for having me here. More than the case study, what I would like to talk about is what does it take for a large enterprise to become successful in the customer experience space. So, the global pandemic sort of, transformed the way we live, we collaborate, and we connect. And then also beyond this, there were economic and social disruptions that forced the customers to re-examine their values and what they expect from companies they do business with, right? And with digital, while the digital transformation has been a long-run discussion between the company and the employees, and between the company and the customers, but it sort of picked pace, and the adoption increased during the pandemic time. And this was sort of driving commerce to exclusively online. Everybody became online overnight, and it's also forced companies of all sizes to contend with the future of workplace as such, and also set new baselines around what the customers are expecting. Now, at the same time, the customers wanting speed and convenience, and they're also seeking empathy and commitment. Both quite different perspectives altogether. And companies needed to invest in solutions that will help them work smarter and adapt to the evolving customer preferences, right? The preferences were changing dramatically. And overnight, people wanted to be able to reach out to their preferred brands and say, can you still deliver stuff to me how can I reach out to you guys? What's the best mechanism to reach out to you? What's the best way that things can get delivered to my home? All those things. And while this was new to us as customers, but it was also new for the companies, because the companies did not transform into the digital altogether. They were more physical and somewhere in the path of moving towards digital, and that was still somewhere in between. So what does it require for companies to transform? What it required for companies to transform was that they needed to be agile, and so that they're able to absorb and adapt to these evolving preferences. And for agility, it means different things to different people. But at the same time, what I think agility would mean is the ability to spot changing trends and then adapt to these and pivot yourself towards these changes or these changed preferences as quickly as possible. Now, from our perspective, what does it take to be agile, right? And while there are many things that companies can have a choice to do, but Zendesk identified 3 key areas which we think is very important for enterprises to be able to adapt to it. One of them is make it easier to hear from your customers. Now, what we mean by this is, make sure that your customers have very easy ways to talk to you. Then allow the customer data and insights to drive the improvements you need to act upon, such as, you may want to add a few more channels, you want to build better self-service, or you want to make some changes to your staffing model. Other thing is allow that data to flow to other teams beyond the customer service, to teams like marketing, product, and operations, right? And the more these departments are interconnected, the easier it is to spot and fix problems. And the third thing in that topic is, and you want every customer interaction to be a good one. So make sure that the agents who are serving your customers have a complete 360-degree view of your customer.
All right.
So that they have everything, they have all the knowledge that they require to be able to know about the customer and be able to empathize with them, and then be able to serve them better and be a good right? The second major thing that we want to say is, build your teams that can stay productive during the times of change, right? And how do you do that? You do that by driving collaboration and knowledge sharing among the team members. You do that by automating routine tasks. And we also heard about in the fireside chat, Gautam, where we talked about bots, which can take away some of the routine tasks away from the agents, so agents are able to work more on complex stuff rather than on the routine mundane stuff of where is my order, or when is it getting delivered, and kind of these things, right? And then leverage systems like bots, automations, workflow triggers, which can help the agents to be able to perform better. And the third thing, the last major thing that we want to see is invest in technology that is flexible and that supports your customers' CX goals. Like, you want to empower everyone to move fast and make changes, and the system should be able to open and be able to integrate with a partner ecosystem and also with the apps, so that all the information that the agent is looking for is available to him at his fingertips, rather than trying to log into multiple systems and being able to look for information and struggling for it. Now,
absolutely.
So what
and the technology provides all those options, Vasu. Since we have a limited time and a whole number of panelists, I'll just quickly sum things up by saying that technology does provide the options. As you said, agility and adaptation is important in the current times. And as Rakesh mentioned in the previous fireside chat, just go for it. Start off your journey and it will reap you exponential benefits for your customers. Taking that point forward, I'll come to you, Jayavant. EaseSt is a digital technology innovation partner for enterprises and startups. So when it comes to being digital at heart, digital in thinking, and digital in approach, tell us about some, say, customer enablement success stories when it comes to CX and what you see as the new normal of engagement from the lens of ROI. Jayant, you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself.
Thanks. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, interesting question. Especially you talked about ROI and customer experience. Actually, being like a digital enablement partner or digital innovation partner, we have various experiences, and I would categorize them about like 3 different kinds of initiatives I've seen that organizations have taken up in last 1.5 years. Prior to that, we all know that companies trying to use digital technology more like an enabling their conventional business. If they are having shops offline, they take it and create an online equivalent of that. But in last 1.5 years, things have dramatically changed for them. So they no longer have to do what they were using and accelerate that, but there are new use cases that has emerged. And as I said, I categorize them in 3 ways. Like one way is we have customers in the, let's say in the business of AI. I'll take an example. One of the largest pharmaceutical company or company that produces various nutritional products or medical devices. It's one of the top global company in healthcare. They used to have like various partners, like from Walmart to various retail stores, and through them they used to sell the business. Now, because all that offline business has impacted, they had to actually start a totally new initiative called direct to consumer. Like this company is not like so much customer focused or engaging customers as much, but they have to completely transform and like bring this change to their business model and try to actually go direct to customer. And that's like a huge change for such a big conglomerate. Second category I would put is it's not so much like just an experience. I'll take one of our, again, another really large company deals in healthcare. It's not just an experience, but the entire engagement model has changed. And they actually today, fortunately, with the advent of technologies and especially AI and data engineering, the solution that we have built is engagement experience, but that actually use power of AI and data to pretty much create a personalization or hyper personalization of a customer models and predict next best action. Like what do you want to do with the customer today? And like predicting actions that are very meaningful. Not only that, identify what channel you already mentioned about this integrated experience. Now here we are looking at all the customers' history of prior engagement and identify what is the channel on which the customer would be more likely to engage and make those attempts, and again still learn from the data. And secondly, at what time should we reach out to him today in the 7 o'clock in the morning or in the evening 5 o'clock? And that those kind of predictions we make and then approach our engage with the customers. And these kind of model allow these companies to still keep engaged and active with their customer base. So that's the second category where we are saying it's not just an experience, but the entire engagement and proactive engagement that we have to drive. And third is like while you are actually like there is one interesting example, like you are in a business, a certain business. With pandemic, what has created is a totally new opportunity because you have a sort of customers that is already engaged with you on like one premise. Say, for example, we work with a large saloon chain based in India, and they have seen opportunity because they have like such a large customer base who are using their apps for making appointments and things like that. They can actually move into a totally different space of e-commerce by actually creating product and things like that. So those kind of dynamics are really available, and these opportunities which I see that pandemic has given to these businesses. So those I found like very interesting stories.
From 3 models of Vasu to 3 categories provided by Jain. But the narrative coming out is that hyper personalization makes the customer experience focus on the value of the customer's time. At the end of the day, as an average customer, your interaction with the brand will be dependent on how much the brand values your time and what is the outcome of that interaction. Let's move on to Ankit. Ankit, BizOnGo claims to be India's largest tech-enabled B2B e-commerce and supply chain platform for packaging, apparels, and other customer goods. Now, the company was founded with the idea of digitally transforming this fragmented and unorganized landscape. So tell us more about the solutions and platforms that you have built to enable big brands and vendors to rethink their omni-channel strategies.
Thank you, Gautam. Thanks a lot for asking that question. But interestingly, both Vasudeva and Jain focused a lot on the customer side of things, on really the interactions that customers have with the brand. At BizOnGo, we actually focus on making sure that they can meet that customer promise. So from digitizing their entire vendor interactions with their manufacturing partners, with their contract partners, to automating their supply chain in a way that it becomes resilient to changes. And this we have seen in the last 2 years come very handy. We actually follow a very specific model of supply chain which is followed in auto industry, but we apply it to fashion and packaging, which is consumption-led auto replenishment. What that helps is create a supply chain in a way that it becomes resilient to vast, changes in demand or reduction in demand. And what we saw with most of our customers last year was that demand increased completely. It was very high, but their supply chains were not ready to cater to that. So that's where we were able to help a lot of brands who had the demand but were not able to deliver the customer promise they made to actually being able to deliver that customer promise. On omni-channel side, we saw a lot of our brands who actually treated online as a 2%, 3% sort of a channel, completely transform and start treating it like a primary channel of engagement with the customers, where, as Vasudeva said, integrated customer experience. In our case, it's really about integrating the supply chain across your offline and online channels, because they had the muscle in offline world, but their systems were not really integrated in a way that they can do returns. They can really be able to ship their products to the customers on time. So an integrated supply chain across channels and a digitized way of actually interacting with your buying side or your procurement side or your vendor base. That's something that we saw come to the fore, and a lot of brands really did well. So the brands that actually grew in the pandemic were the ones who were resilient, who were able to integrate this offline and online world in a much better way and actually deliver that promise. And of course, as Vasudev and Jain said, a lot of customer experience on the front end side. Those are the kind of brands that we saw prosper and become really, really large. But at Bizongo, that's what we do. We help brands digitize their vendor base and automate their supply chain in a way that it becomes much more resilient and integrated across their channels.
All right. I'm sure there would be challenges in syncing up as well as you try and enable for your, say, vendors and everyone to connect with the customer and make sure the CX is great. We'll address those challenges later on. Meanwhile, let me get another logistics player in to comment on how they managed to rise above the competition. Ali Delivery's logistics prowess has enabled it to fulfill over 1 billion shipments, I believe, to 525 million households across India. So how do you provide and tune CX to over 17,000 of your business customers and over 7 lakh individual sellers? Again, bringing back to the point of how do you sync everything to make sure that it provides a single customer view?
Thanks, Gautam. Firstly, pleased to be here. As a logistics company, delivery has obviously grown massively, as you indicated with those numbers, right? We have shipped more than 1 billion shipments over the last 10 years, and we're rapidly accelerating towards the next milestone much faster. In this kind of pace, you're usually playing a game of catch up. We've done quite a bit to sort of make things as automated as possible. In the logistics industry, it just starts with being as transparent as possible to not just your business customers, but to the end consignees, right? With how do you provide tracking information? You have your business customer conversations end the moment you ship the shipments on their behalf, but that's when the consignees come in. Now, how do we give them real-time information of where is their shipment along the journey? Which node of our complex logistics network is that shipment lying in? Are there any delays? There could be a delay because of an area that has been cordoned off due to the pandemic. There could be floods in Orissa or Kerala because of which shipments are stuck. How do we communicate that? So the challenges are many, and we try to address them one piece at a time, where we say that how do we build in systems that automatically detect this, because the scale at which we are, we cannot rely on human intervention for most of these cases, right? So you can have thousands of shipments stuck at any point of time during the day. How do we make sure that information is provided? So our primary focus is being transparent and exposing all information that we have about each individual's shipment across over the web. Now, this could be on our tracking page on our website. We're building a mobile app that will have more two-way communication so that people can tell us if the shipment was indeed delivered or not, and escalate in case they need to let us know if there was some problem with it, right? So those are high focus areas. beyond that, we segregate our teams in terms of who focuses on a consignee and who, as the end receiver, is what we call a consignee, and then who focuses on the customer, which are the businesses that deal with this, right? Over there, we yet have a lot to do in terms of bringing automation, because we're dealing with huge, large organizations, right? And an Amazon or a Myntra. So it's more human oriented there. And as it increases in terms of scale, so small businesses and then eventually consignees, we try to bring automation. For example, our data science team looks at patterns on which is the most frequently asked question, and we try to interpret, because not all our consignees are going to type a question in exact English. They come from every corner of India. They speak in English or any combination of English with any other regional language. So how do we interpret that message of what are they trying to ask and try to provide options so that we can give them accurate information? So most of that is related to those communications, and we call the tech behind it. We have a customer experience system that consists of a ticketing system. We have Freshdesk, similar to Zendesk, right? And then we have some automation tools and rules engines that decide what needs to be communicated at what time. And given the complexity of our operations and the kind of escalation that can come, we've built those. We have built and are building a lot of those systems in house. That said, a lot of our customer experience initiatives as of today are reactive. Looking forward, what we're looking to do is how do we make them more proactive, where we identify a need for a touch point, a need to communicate something even before the individual feels the need to ask that question. So that is a very interesting challenge, and we have some pretty cool initiatives along the way for that. So that's largely how we think of customer experience.
All right, we'll follow up on that, on how your transformation from reactive to proactive happens. But we've heard how you can sync up the moving parts in the back end to improve the CX experience. Let's also hear how the brand can provide a consistent experience to, well, improve the CX experience. Uma, I'll bring in you on this at this point. Now, given your vast experience in a variety of leadership roles across major brands, what, according to you, are the strategies that work when creating a consistent brand experience across ever-expanding digital and physical channels?
Thanks, Gautam. I think everyone's spoken about how the online channel was no longer a complementary strategy, but became a primary channel to either engage or to serve, or to sell to customers post the pandemic. I think that is a given. However, what happened here is mostly brands were caught unawares, of course, but we weren't prepared with this so-called single view of customer. And I think that is a strategy, pandemic notwithstanding, which is very critical to really create a good customer experience. Now, consumers obviously are leaving a lot of data behind with us, and primarily maybe with retail, at least it is coming through the offline channel first. And while the data is probably more vast from an online channel, the focus stays on the offline channel data, and the analytics teams and the CX teams, the customer service teams, everybody looks at that data. And I think that causes firstly a breaking point, right? Because now your complaint data is not attached to the customer identity, or your sales data is broken. You could be buying more expensive products from the store. You could be buying, more replenishment products from online, but you don't have a sense of what's really going on with your customer unless you actually create really what we call a single view. Of course, I think it's also a unicorn in itself, the single view of customer. But yes, I think it's very important to know what you need to understand about a customer to be able to create the correct experience. And I think to me, that's the most critical strategy. Bring your data together and make sure that, you have enough data and the real data and the width of data you need on a single customer. I think that's very, very critical and something that everyone needs to do. I think the second thing which I have found and, which is very important is that discovery is taking place more and more online, right? Whether it is your search, right, or whether it's through the content, or whether it is through articles, blogs, etc. Discovery is much more taking place online, right? While sales could be taking place either or, in terms of the channels. Now, I think here is where it's very important that both CX and marketing practitioners bring this whole funnel together. So I think where is your search really going to actually land becomes very important. How is it that your on-site search, right, is complementing the overall search that consumers are doing on Google and other search engines in terms of what are people really looking for, and are you leveraging that through your on-site search, for example? And then, are you able to complement that with visual search tools, right, where you feed in an image? Are you able to get complementary products? Are you able to get similar looking products? Are you also able to use your app to scan, right, and actually be able to shop using that becomes very, important. Are you able to activate your online cart in the store and vice versa? Like if you looked at something with a personal shopper in the store, are you able to feed that information back to say, okay, I'm going to look at it at home, but it's in my so-called cart. I mean, most people use the cart even as a wish list for that matter, is what all the data shows you. So I think it becomes very important if you have the data, bring the channels together, because then you're able to put in actual use cases which help customers to shop. I think it is great that we have all the technology available. We have some providers here, in fact, who give us all that opportunity, but creating that strategy in terms of what is it that you want to do and enable for the customers, I think to me that is very, very key. And I think the third piece, which is very important, is I think all brands, much as the technology partners, we are all platforms as well. I think the brand itself has become a platform, right? So it's very important to say, what are you going to actually create, right? Which either delights the customer through that platform, or is it going to take away certain pain points for customers? And here is where I think connected experiences become important, right? But also really the cross leverage across these experiences, which therefore enable you to gain that share of mind or share of wallet that you're going after the customer really, helps. So I'll give you an example at Raymond. When I was at Raymond, we realized that, we sold a lot of combi packs, which are shirt and trouser packs of length, fabric length, right? But that much is not coming back through the tailoring system, which means that it is sitting at home and is probably doing the rounds and is passed on as, gifts, much like Indian wear, for women, where they keep stock loads and then it slowly goes into the tailoring system. And then Raymond therefore launched an online tailoring as a platform where you could have a stylist who comes to your house, and that actually gave you multiple orders, because now the whole family would give orders, and all Indians seem to have a lot of fabric at home. Right now, here is where Raymond created a platform strategy, therefore, which helps you to expand the brand, right? Go to the household of the brand, of the consumer. However, it's really looking at saying that what is the problem you're trying to solve. People probably don't know tailors, or there's inertia. Tailors are not, joining the family tailoring business per se. How do you solve, that problem? I think to me, platforms are very, very important. So whether it is your loyalty program as a platform which creates communities and how you leverage that, or whether you create services as a platform, or whether you even take partnerships. And I think, while I've not worked with them at all, but one of the best examples I see is Farm Easy. And recently I did my entire body checkup, blood work, everything with Farm Easy at home. Whereas initially I only thought of them as, someone who's going to deliver my medicines. To me, I think these are the three key strategies which I have found create real value for the brand, but also backed by real value for the consumer. So it's not just, we feel good that we've done something, but the consumers do benefit. So one is the data and, good use, responsible use, and delightful use of the data, stitching together the discovery to the conversion process for the customer well through your own technology and through your own solutions. And I think how you can actually become a platform for, consumers, so that they can engage, interact, and really use the brand to its full potential.
Absolutely. Some fantastic examples there. And the example you cited of Raymond's especially is relevant in the context of the outcomes. What do you do with the data? As you mentioned, you can collect data from disparate points, bring it together to enable a single point of view of customers. You can have marketing and CX work together to kind of figure out, okay, over the touch points, how do we engage? But most importantly, it's the context of what the customer wants and what are the solutions that they want, which differentiates one brand for the other. And let's not forget, when you you talk about platforms, the paradigm is also changing, whereby brands are going D2C, like a Mama Earth would go approach a customer directly, which then begs the question, what happens to the platform then and there? But you mentioned Farm Easy. We have Call Health as well, another player, major player in the healthcare space. I would like to hear their stories of success. Hari, I'll bring you in at this point. Over the last 2 years, healthcare has been perhaps one of the most disruptive industries in the country. And it's also a space where the customer expects the highest level of personalization across online and offline platforms. So at Call Health, you bring the hospital home for your users through a range of collaborations in-house and otherwise. So how do you ensure uniformity of services? Hari, you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Is that okay now?
No worries. Yes, okay. It is. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks. No, some interesting perspectives there from all of you. So thank you so much for that. Couple of points so that we understand the context. Call Health, as you probably would know, is an integrated healthcare player that brings products and services, right? Both, whether it is a medicine, whether it is a wheelchair or whatever physical product, as well as services, whether it is physiotherapy at home or dialysis at home, or now we're talking about sleep study at home and so on. So products and healthcare services to both individual and institutional customers, right? So it's not only direct to customer, but also to insurance and corporates and governments to their respective citizens. So that's what we do. We have both what we call as a transactional engagement and a tenured engagement. So you could have an episodic consultation, or you could have a continued subscription-based engagement. Now, to do all of this, we have what we call as a simple philosophy that we use. Anything that can be done virtually should be done virtually. Anything that requires a physical touch should be done at home. Only when both those principles fail should we go to a hospital or a wellness center. That's a principle on which we operate. Now, what this means is that all kinds of information points have to be interconnected for us to be able to arrive at what works well and what doesn't work well. I'll give you an example. When we started certain services, which we felt were required by the elderly population, and we did some kind of understanding or analytics of our data, we realized that some pockets of Hyderabad have elderly people, retired folks, concentration of those folks. Some geographies had youngsters and had, let us say, higher spending capacity and so on. So you could even start, and we started doing, therefore, the right kind of marketing into those geographies. So you talked about certain services that can go into the geographies where people of that age and texture reside. So we have, so Uma, we take another, approach here, which is everything that Call Health does is translated into what we call as 250,000 entities. Customer is an entity, age is an entity, molecule is an entity, and so on. There can be millions of members of that entity. So the correlation between the 250 entities is what determines our analytics and action. And to answer your question, therefore, for every entity, we look at it from a stakeholder perspective. Does that entity make sense to a customer, to an investor, to a provider, or to a officer who is on the ground? So therefore, information rights and decision rights, as we call it, who can read that information and who can act on that information, right? Edit that information is defined at every entity level. That means that there is a one view in the way we approach information to any stakeholder on any issue. So if I am going to be a phlebotomist coming home to do a blood test, by the way, we started it 6 years ago in India. When we come home, how much does the phlebotomist have to know about your health is critical to define upfront. Failing which, chances are you will give your entire health report to that fellow without your knowledge. And therefore, that becomes a critical decision point in the way healthcare information is shared. I also noticed that unlike ordering for medicines, which you want to do online, because that medicine particularly is a product, inanimate thing that you can ask. Whereas when it comes to a service, people want to talk to them, whether it is a doctor or a dietitian or so on. And therefore, the ability to have a voice and an offline approach is equally important as digital. And therefore, what kind of services have what kind of emphasis is something that we have played out. Keeping that in view, and this is another very important point we noticed, we talked about longitudinal analysis of information, but in our case, we look at it as longitudinal analysis of your information. So you did a blood test 3 years ago, you did a blood test now, you did it in ThyroCare first time, you did it in Lucid the next time, and so on. All that information comes to you as a physical data. And Call Health digitize that whole information to extract the values and populate it onto your EHR so that it lets you know whether you did it at Lucid or whether you did it ThyroCare or SRL. The information that comes in based on the kind of test you have taken will go reside in the particular cell, and you are able to therefore see the pattern, whether your lipids are moving up or whether your cholesterol is, your HbA1c is going down, and what are the elements below that. That's the level of detail that we have gone into. And so what we have noticed is information is critical, and unless we are able to bring all the entities that come together and define it in such a way at the very beginning, it becomes a very complex exercise for let us say, an organization to do it. For example, I used to be the head of consulting for Tech Mahindra at one stage in my life. And I used to work with multiple organizations across the world. And I can tell you that the level of digitization across different stakeholders and different processes are so varied and complex that trying to marry 3 different bits of information and getting them to show you meaning is a complex thing to do. And that is why when we built Call Health 6 years back, we said we will start with every entity as the source of truth. And that entity and its view around it, therefore, becomes very easy. I can string together, for example, depending on the medicines you buy, depending on the tests you do, depending on the doctor consultations you have, and therefore, what kind of prescription was done, I can today say in the city of Hyderabad, which places have high urogenital issues, or which places have high cardiovascular issues, and which geographies have high, ortho issues. We are able to bring together multiple data and do that. So that, I think, is what organizations should set out to do, not to look at it at a process level, but to look at it at an entity level.
Absolutely. There we have an example of how you need to see things again in the context of the customer, whether it's a tenured or transactional engagement, as Hari has specified, where each entity, how does it interact with the customer and what does it bring out to the entire experience? That's the key part there. And in the context of maintaining that balance, something which Hari mentioned, that you need to know which services can be automated and which services still need the human touch. Uma, I'll bring you in, and talk about the modern store. Say, surveys done on global retail trends indicate that while consumers intend to continue buying online, 25% of online shoppers globally find that experience less satisfying than, say, visiting a physical store. So in the context of going phygital, what's your vision of the modern store and the right steps needed to transform and modernize that physical store using technology, say, including, say, IoT for dynamic pricing or automated checkout for improving CX? We have about, say, 10 minutes left. So let's have a rapid fire round of Q&A between all of us.
So I think, I'll live from where Hari left off, right? Some brilliant life cycle management, if I were to say, of customers, which makes me also believe that, really, if we've been talking of personalization, but this is going to be largely enabled by AI more and more as an enabler, both of people as well as for consumers. I think that's going to be the biggest way where we see the investments going. And, I've been working with this, helping the startup. It's called Stylenook, which is a artificial intelligence based curated styling, platform. And I see that as the future where the staff, the employees as well as AI come together, but it's like really an empowered consumer experience. Second piece, I think, with, cookies really dying, third party cookies dying, I think first party data will be far more important. Goes back to the same point that personalization will have to be far richer and more relevant, because now it's about your consumers whose data you have, you own, and therefore you have to actually innovate around that data personally for the consumer. Again, going back to, I think, love what Hari said about how they have actually been able to capture at an entity level. So absolutely brilliance. And the third, I think, is very big, is going to be conversation and social commerce and everything which is around community, right? How do you bring together? Can families come together and shop on a television screen? I think connected experiences which bring people together, especially with this whole fear of pandemic, people want to go to the stores, may not want to go in groups, etc., will become very, very important. Plus gaming, if you see, right, how you play games with each other across the world, so it can bring people together. I think that will be another one. And the last, I think it is seamless experience, but more so at the conversion end. and how frictionless that we can make that, because people want to enjoy the experience, but it's not the point of payment, it's not the point of billing, it's not the point of checkout, etc. How frictionless can that be made by technology, which is seamless? Can I take my phone, put things in my cart, and just walk out, because you have my data and you can pay? I can just walk out and it's going to get debited from a stored card if RFID permits. It's things like that which can add a lot of value to the customer experience in terms of removing the pain from the experience that you could have. Yeah.
All right. So in terms of connected experience, we've spoken about the front end. Let's go back to the back end, and I'll bring in Ankit here. Ankit, earlier in the discussion, we spoke about the supply chain with Ali also giving his point of view. But I also want to look at supply chain blind spots and how plugging those gaps can improve CX. Now, many retailers think that control towers are the answer to, say, address a multitude of supply chain blind spots. But control towers are also supporting companies in sensing demand fluctuations as well as supply disruptions in real time. And that translates into various risks, the risk of poor customer service, or the risk of lower revenues, or the risk of lower margins due to expensive cost correction. So what are your deployments in terms of rethinking the supply chain to be more responsive and mitigate risks, and in turn improving CX overall?
Yep. Thanks, Gautam. I think from a core supply chain perspective, it's important for the brand to think about both sides. And when I say both sides, that means not over inventorizing, but at the same time not facing a stock out as well, because you will not be able to deliver an experience to your customer if you do not have the right style, the right, if we look at fashion as Uma was describing, if you don't have the right product, all of these will at the end create that dissatisfaction for the customer. So in what we have seen working out for brands is actually being able to build a completely connected, resilient supply chain where you can, rather than forecast, but you work on a real-time way, integrating your inventory right till the manufacturing process, right? Our partners who work at the manufacturing level are able to see inventories at each one of the stores or each one of the warehouses that the brands have, which gives them a direct visibility to not wait for the brand to tell them what to order, but the system's actually telling them every day what to ship, how much to ship, when to ship, which SKU to now start manufacturing. This takes away all the time, planning, and inefficiencies that could be created because somebody manually is ordering, somebody manually is deciding how much to order, which style to order, which not to order. Really, the systems and data and your sort of, the data that the brands collect really decides which one is working, which one is not working. Another opportunity that we have seen, brands being able to really leverage is pricing as well, and dynamic pricing. As based on that data, if you can figure out which brand is selling in which store, which e-commerce channel, and if everything is integrated, you have huge opportunities to really, as you talked about, margins as well as customer experience, keep both of them at the same level and still be able to deliver an exceptional revenue as well as customer experience to the customers that walk into your store. That's what we've seen really working wonders.
Ali, let me get you in. You earlier mentioned, the challenge is to go from reactive to proactive, and considering deliveries also got big fundraising plans coming up this month, and of course the surge in volumes and value expected after almost 2 years of pandemic-induced disruptions. How is that journey going to pan out, considering the massive growth that is going to come in, especially in terms of CX? How do you go from reactive to proactive and still manage this surge in growth?
At multiple fronts, Gautam. So over the last 10 years, having shipped more than 1 billion shipments, we have data on more than 300 million individuals, addresses, identities. So we have to balance privacy, where we have personally identifiable information around that individual, but also being able to provide a high quality of service. So it could be more positive as well as negative. So if I know that someone has not had a great experience, how do I make sure my subsequent experience is much better, right? How do I build up data about that? Or it could be the other way around, right? India e-commerce has a very big returns problem, right? Where you have some individuals who just shop and very easily return, especially if it's a COD order. How does our data science engine build up a profile of a consumer where I know that this person is highly likely to return every item they buy, and how do I pass on that information without sharing PII, which is personally identifiable information. So those are proactive measures that we could take in terms of how do I identify the profile of a consumer, that is it a home address or is it a work address, depending on which I can tweak my delivery times or pickup timing, right? How do I know that the consumer prefers communication over an SMS, whose readability is typically low, or should it be a WhatsApp or email or a push notification about a mobile app, right? Preferences about a consumer. So obviously over various touch points, and I think this is pretty much broadly what everyone has been talking about, is building a profile, understanding the individual, understanding their preferences and their needs, and addressing that, right? And making sure that you're keeping your promises of whatever you plan to deliver to the consumer, and when you do not are not able to keep up your promises, making sure that they are made aware and are comfortable with that. So that's more around what we would do proactively.
All right, almost out of time. So I'll take forward what Ali said, and I'll come to Vasu for the point that, if you are being proactive, we see messaging platforms, Vasu, such as WhatsApp, they've become the new digital storefront in addition to being a more direct customer support tool. And it's also helping companies overcome that app barrier when it comes to customer engagement. So we are talking about more proactive here rather than reactive. But from experience, some companies do it right and some not. So in terms of scaling up CX, what should companies do to balance engagement in an organic way that does not appear artificial or pushy? Your summary statement.
Yeah, sure. Till some time ago, the companies used to decide, on what channel a customer should come to me and to my premises or to my brand or whatever it is, and at what time. The timings were also defined by the brands. But the customers are not demanding that the brand is available to them at a time of their choice, or a channel of their choice, and from their own comforts, wherever they're based today. And they also want the engagement to be in the manner that they do with their own family, right, or friends. They want it to be more conversational in nature than being, one-sided kind of a thing. So all this means that, companies have to adopt their tools and processes to make sure that, they're not just ready to engage, but also providing a conversational experience across all channels that they are available on, and that where the customer wants them to be on, right? And, just want to give a couple of statistics, right? Based on a CX Trends report that we published in 2021, we found that 61% of Indian customers started using messaging for customer support in 2020, which indicates an immense potential, and is also by far the largest adoption that we have seen in any country globally. The second thing is the messaging adoption is the highest among the millennials or Gen Zs, and there are about 2.77 billion monthly active users around the globe on messaging platform, right? And when we talk about the future of CX, messaging is possibly one of the most important pieces. And when done right, messaging ensures that the continuity in conversations via a chat history, or a customer context altogether. You could start a conversation on one channel, let's say on a chat or a chat bot, and then pretty often that you are very possible that you're busy on something else and left the chat engine. But then after some time you want to go onto a different channel, let's say a Facebook Messenger, or onto an email. The conversation should continue. The history should be available to the customer, to the agent, and to the customer. He need not repeat it either. And I have there are multiple examples that I have seen in the past as well, in the near future as well. Where in the near past, sorry, not near future, near past also. Where customers, the companies are saying, yes, we will invest in channels. Let's put messaging. Let's put this platform. But at the back end, they're not integrated. So while they're available, but they're still not integrated to give one single experience either to the customer or to the agent. So there is a disconnect. So what we need to do is, integrate all these channels, both for the customer and also for the agent, so that there is a better experience that's available. And,
absolutely.
And the big tech, and not just I was talking about, the big tech is also investing. For example, Google launched business messaging. Apple has expanded the business chat very widely.
And let's not forget Gupshup as well.
Absolutely, yeah, Gupta. And Facebook allowed Messenger and Instagram to
that
chat.
is an important point which you mentioned, Vasu, with something which is something Uma also mentioned, that when you are approaching CX, you also have to bring all the elements of that data together and make sure that the context of the outcomes is front and center for the enterprise. And in fact, as we speak, I have received at least I think 2 messages from brands. One is from an acquisition perspective and one is from a retention perspective. So we'll see how that journey progresses. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. So on that note, it's time to conclude our panel on omni consumption driving success on all fronts. I'd like to thank all the panelists for sharing their views on the CX transformation of today and tomorrow and how it can power the next level of growth for enterprises. And of course, thank you to our viewers as well. This was the last panel discussion for the event, but stay tuned to the Mint India CX Summit for an interesting closing keynote address by Nimisha Jain, who's the Managing Director and partner at Boston Consulting Group, as she speaks on lessons from global leaders. And for that, I'll hand it over first to Zinnia.
Yes, thank you so much, Gautam, for that very, very interesting discussion. You asked some very relevant questions that I'm sure are on top of the mind for all of our viewers here, but you left us with some very interesting takeaways. I think we've concluded that offering an omni-channel experience, which used to be the bleeding edge of retail, now is a requirement for survival and requires a razor-like focus on value creation. And all of the leaders that you brought on board for this discussion, I think we all agree that they realize it's time to take a hard look at their strategic and customer priorities and who they really want to be from the omni-channel perspective. So thank you for that brilliant discussion. Have a good one. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the final and, like Gautam rightly said, one of the most awaited sessions for today. A closing note by Ms. Nimisha Jain, Managing Director and Partner, Boston Consulting Group, on the lessons learned in CX from global leaders and how AI-powered intelligent automation solutions like RPA and IQ Bot are changing the very nature of work and can be used to improve CX. She'll be joining me in just a couple of seconds here. And there she is. Ms. Nimisha Jain is with us. Welcome. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us at the Mint India CX Summit. And I'm not going to take a single minute away because we're really looking forward to hear from you. Over to you.
Great. No, thanks, Enya, and thank you so much for having me. I was listening to the last panel and, nodding away as I agreed with all of what they said. Very excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I was asked to talk about customer experience and, and learnings from global players. But I want to start with a personal story. Not very long ago, at the height of the pandemic, in fact, I had to buy something online, and it was a pair of shoes for my son. Now, for those of you who have kids, especially ones that are 11 years old, you will know that they grow very fast. And what happens in the pandemic is that suddenly, while they haven't stepped out of home, nothing fits them anymore, right? So as wave one subsided, we suddenly realized that he needed shoes, and I wasn't quite comfortable going into a store, so we ordered shoes online, and again, like any other 11-year-old, once he's decided he wants a pair of shoes and it's been ordered, he would plague me every day to say, has it arrived, has it arrived, has it arrived? And so what happened finally is that, his shoes arrived, and unfortunately, they were the wrong color and the wrong size. So obviously something had gone wrong, on the e-commerce platform, and I'm choosing not to name which one it was. But the interesting part is not that it came late and it came wrong. I think what is really interesting is what happened after that, right? So we put in a complaint, we put in a request for it to be changed. We were running out of time, so we just canceled the order and we actually went and bought one physically. But what happened after that is that the platform reached out to us because of this feedback that we'd given, gave us a pair of shoes, reached out, apologized, understood what had gone wrong, and actually circled back with us and explained why this had happened and said what changes are they making to make sure that it doesn't happen again. As somebody who's been working for over 2 decades in the area of customer experience, I was just blown away. And I was blown away not by the fact that something had gone wrong, but by what they did for us after that, in terms of not just fixing it, but more importantly, telling us what they would do differently going forward. And then staying in touch on our next 2 orders to make sure that things had actually happened in the right manner. And that to me is customer experience. It's customer experience and that's delighting a customer for a few reasons. It's exceeding expectations. It's really being there in a moment of truth to fix something that has gone wrong, and staying the course after that to make sure that you've actually corrected it and that the customer is feeling good about it. Mistakes happen, things go wrong. It's really what you do in those situations that makes the difference. Now, what does customer experience mean to me? Customer experience to me, is 3 things. It is, as a consumer today, consumers want 3 things. They want you to know them. So they say, know me, remember me, anticipate what I want, and don't expect me to tell you every time. Organizations and brands that have been able to actually remember customers, use the power of data and analytics to know them, remember them, anticipate what they need, and really provide it to them even before they ask for it, are the ones that just stand out compared to everyone else in terms of their requirements. We all know the stories of what Netflix has been able to do to anticipate what kind of movies you want to watch. But this is so much more than that. It is about knowing that when winter hits, you are going to order certain types of medicines, certain kinds of clothes. You prefer black to pink. You like fleece and not woolens. It's remembering that data and providing targeted recommendations that consumers really, really value. And retailers across the world have tried to do this, but very few have really been able to crack it. And let me give you a few examples of how customer experience can completely change the journey. Across different parts of the journey. I'll start closer home with China. Hemas, which is the retail offering that Alibaba has actually brought the wet market into a physical environment. There's a certain experience of a wet market that consumers love. They love to go in, they like to see that the seafood is fresh, they want to actually touch it, they want to taste it, they want to get that feeling of it being really fresh, and they want the smells and odors that go along with it. But at the same time, they want the convenience of it being delivered home. They want it to be, to happen in less than 30 minutes. And what Hemas has been able to do, and they want all the details around, where did it come from, when was it caught, was it really fresh, all of which they would do in a wet market by having a conversation with the seller. What Hemas does is they've got a physical environment that actually feels like a wet market. They have a radius of delivery, which is, less than 45 minutes, that allows you then to get that feeling that it's actually fresh. They have QR codes, which allow you to actually, through an app on your phone in the store, get more details around that seafood to say, when was it actually caught? When was it? How fresh is it? The fact that it is fully chemical free, and really understand all the questions that you would have had normally from a seller. So they've found a way of combining the physical experience that you used to enjoy, the human experience that you used to enjoy, in a more convenient, digital and physical omni-channel format. And that's what really creates, customer delight. Virtual reality has been around for a long time. And, we've all heard the stories of, virtual test drives and virtual, homes and so on. But, and virtual try-ons of frames. Lenskart does it closer home. Bobby Parker has been doing it in the US. But I'll talk a bit about, what IKEA has been able to do. They have actually been able to, they created an augmented reality experience by which you can actually see what your home would look like with all the different products that they have placed inside it. Now, what that does is, if you are a homeowner, if you are looking at doing up your home, doing up your room, doing up a part of your office, being able to visualize what that looks like is actually the biggest pain point. And depending on how much time and budget you have, you will involve an expert like an interior decorator or an architect to help you solve for that. But what many consumers really want is just visualization in that moment. And that's what IKEA has been able to solve for. So it's not just about saying, I can give you a physical experience online. They're actually able to give you an experience which you would never get in a store, because you could never be able to actually go out and figure out what this will look like in my home unless you physically picked it up and brought it in. And if you wanted to do 5 or 6 different things, including change the color of your wall and change the rug, you could never actually do that. So they're creating a virtual experience in a manner that just does not, could never be possible in the physical world. And again, that to me is delight. A third example that I have personally enjoyed is one of my favorite brands, and it's called Canada Goose. They have these really warm jackets, very, very, and they have a thermal index, which really tells you, depending on the temperatures outside, which jackets you should buy. But what is most exciting about the store, and it doesn't matter whether you're in the heat of Texas and California, or if you are, in the winter in Boston, they have a room inside the store, which is a cold room. And depending on the temperature that you are planning to use this in, that cold room can be adapted to give you those temperature conditions. You can wear the jacket and walk into the cold room and see what it actually feels like. Again, not a physical experience, but one that you could otherwise never have imagined. Because if you are planning to go skiing and you're buying something, in a warm environment, you can never really judge what this is going to be like. But they have now replicated and simulated that for you. So to me, these are just a few stories, to set your mind thinking. But, the real message I wanted to leave with you is customer experience and customer delight is really all about being able to offer experiences that were never possible before, that you really wanted, that were latent needs, pain points that consumers had in the journey, that left them feeling confused, left them feeling unsure about what they wanted to buy. And you have been able to actually bust that, break that compromise, and provide that experience in a combination of a physical and digital manner. And that's really what customer delight is all about. Being with consumers in moments of truth, being there to really change the game when things go wrong, and they go wrong very often, being able to provide experiences and being able to solve a pain point that has existed for very long and you felt was never solvable before. And last but not the least, customer experience is about reciprocal altruism. It's about being there for the consumer, putting the customer first, where the customer feels that you're not there to sell more, but you're actually there to do what's right for her. The best relationships I have ever had with with sellers are those who've actually told me that, what, this product, don't buy from me. And each of you would remember that if you walked into, the general stores or the kirana stores that you grew up going to, sometimes they would say, "Ye hamare paas nahi, aap wahan se jaake khareed lijiye." And it is really about, the person accepting and acknowledging what he's good at and what he or she is not good at. And that's when the consumer starts to believe that you want what's best for me. You're not just trying to make another buck. So doing things which are altruistic, doing things that put the customer first, by really builds a relationship for life, a customer for life. All LTV goes up the charts because there is long lifetime value, recurring lifetime value from that consumer, directly herself, but also the advocacy that it creates with all the other consumers that she brings along. Advocacy is such a powerful outcome of customer experience. I hear so many people say that customer experience comes at a cost. It comes at at additional expense. I have to give promotions to consumers. I have to give loyalty benefits. I have to build my team to do it. But the benefits you get are actually stupendous. Many of the things I've talked about don't come at extra cost. Being there for them at times of needs doesn't come at extra cost, but that's what really builds true relationships. So customer experience is not about more discounts. It's not about greater promotions. It's not about giving them lots and lots of loyalty points, but really about being there in things that matter, remembering who they are, anticipating what they need. Now, this has always been important. This is something that consumers have wanted for a long time, and we as marketers have always wanted to deliver to our consumers. But what has stopped us from doing it? And what stopped us from doing it, or what has held us back for many years, was the fact that we were constrained by the physical environment that we operated in. The advantage today is that with the power of digital, with the power of data and analytics, there is so much more that we can actually offer to our consumers. Data and analytics allows me to truly remember who my customer is. If I'm a retail store, it allows me to remember who she is, what she buys, what she buys for herself, what she buys for her kids, what she buys for the family, what kinds of clothes she wants, what types of trends she's interested in, what colors she likes. I can remember all of that. And when I have a new season coming, I can actually remember and send her exactly the type of backpack I know her child will like, the kind of fleece jacket that she is actually going to want. Remembering that, providing that targeted recommendation. There is a retailer in the UK who actually ran targeted recommendations for their customers without providing any discounts, and then ran a parallel experiment by sending consumers non-targeted recommendations but with heavy discounts. And there's no prizes for guessing which one actually had greater success. It's the targeted recommendations that had much greater success, even though they were lower or no discounts, because they were sent to a consumer at the right time, at the time that she was thinking of this and she genuinely needed it, rather than just spraying her and cluttering her inbox or her WhatsApp with lots of information that she did not want. So really thinking through who your consumer is, what she wants, using the power of data, collecting that data, but more importantly, utilizing that data in a very specific and targeted manner is really what this is all about. I was speaking to you earlier about advocacy and the power of advocacy. Let me start with a few data points. Based on research that I have done, brands that have high advocacy almost always have higher growth rates and are more profitable. I have done a correlation of over 500 brands across the world and correlated it with their brand advocacy index or their brand advocacy scores. There is a 92% correlation between their brand advocacy scores and their brand growth levels. Brands that are successful, brands that serve their customers well, and brands whose customers advocate them actually end up growing faster, growing better, and being more profitable. So there is no stronger business logic than to be consumer first and to really build advocacy in your customers. But how do you really make that happen? I mean, we all want to do that. We all want brands that will solve consumers' problems, that will actually build advocacy. But how do you make that happen? And as I've looked at brands, around the world, and especially in emerging markets like ours, I think there are three important learnings that I have. Advocacy comes from superior offering. So really delivering discernible differentiation in the product and the features that you are able to, that consumers buy. Second, providing superior service combined with that at any point through the customer journey, at the time of discovery, purchase, or even post-purchase. And third, and in many ways most importantly, the kind of experience you provide after the consumer has made the purchase. Post-purchase experience was one of the biggest factors that swung the difference between and post-purchase service experience was one of the biggest factors that swung the difference between average advocacy and high advocacy. And that's really because that's when the pain point is the highest. All brands focus on creating awareness, helping discovery, closing the sale. But how many of us really focus on what does the consumer feel after she has bought what she has, after she's experienced the brand, the pain points she has in those moments, and at those times when you're able to solve for it. I mean, as an appliance player, are you able to anticipate even before a washing machine breaks down, that it is actually at the point that it may, and give an early warning indicator to your customer to make certain changes or call the repairman. The pain that a consumer faces for 4 days when she cannot use her washing machine versus having to pay a bit extra, but actually having an anticipatory call where things get fixed even before they go bad. I mean, think about which one she will value more, and think about where you will make more. That's really where customer service is headed today. And that's really about what customers are expecting in terms of how you can anticipate even before a problem happens, what she needs, and solve for it even before that. The one word I'd like to leave you with is customer service today is increasingly about becoming proactive. It is not about, knowing that there's a problem, having someone raise a flag and then solving for it. Of course, that will happen sometimes, but it's increasingly becoming about being proactive, anticipating, solving before a problem even exists, and continuing to up the game on what service levels can be. A very interesting data point from some recent research I've done is that in customers' minds today, the boundaries between different categories are completely blurring. We were doing research for a bank recently, and this was a very traditional bank. The customers had never experienced a digital banking, and we were talking to customers who had never used digital banking. But when we asked them, would they be open to it? Many of them said yes. When we asked them, what do they expect from it? They said, we expect it to be as simple and as seamless as using an Uber or buying something on Amazon, or watching something on Hotstar. They'd never, and to repeat, these are customers who've never used digital banking before. They have no expectations on what digital banking is, but they know that if I have an app on my phone, then it needs to be as good as the best-in-class apps that I have been using in any other category. Because in their mind, it is now an app on my phone. They don't think of it as this is a bank versus a versus a video streamer versus something else. It is an app, and any app needs to be as fast, as seamless, as intuitive, and as easy to understand. So as the lines are blurring, the expectations that customers have from us are also actually going up higher and higher. And as we think about the kind of digital experiences we need to provide to our customers, the benchmarks now are not constrained to our own industries anymore. The benchmarks are cross-industry, cross-platform. They're really about what is a best-in-class digital experience. And that's what each of us needs to benchmark ourselves to. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit to talk about, it's all very good to talk about great customer experience, the importance of omni-channel, great digital experiences. I think we can get into a room and architect what that perfection is going to look like. But the real question, and where the rubber hits the road, is what does it take to make this happen? The fact of the matter is, while every marketer, every CEO, every organization I know will agree that customer experience is key, that providing best-in-class digital experience is super important, actually delivering it on the ground is not something that every organization is able to do. Many organizations struggle, and what does it take, therefore, to organize yourself? What does it take to build that capability and to hone and improve that capability over time to really be able to solve for this on an ongoing basis? The short answer is that it's not easy. The short answer is that it needs to come from the top, and it needs to be a CEO priority. Organizations where customer experience is a top 5 KPI for the leadership team are the only organizations that are really able to do this on an ongoing basis. Tracking what gets measured gets done. This is an old adage that I have lived by for many, many decades. And I continue to believe that this is super important. Measuring, measuring customer experience, tracking customer experience, and really sending the message top down throughout the organization that this is a key priority and a key metric is priority number one. Second, organizing yourself around customer experience. Who in the organization owns this KPI? Is it something that's owned by one function somewhere, or is it actually owned by everyone in the organization? Every touch point, everyone in an organization owns a touch. Everyone in an organization needs to feel that customer experience is key and that each of them are contributing towards it. And that's what really makes magic happen. Third, how do you use technology and how do you use the power of data and analytics to really build superior offerings and superior experience? How do you build the teams, whether in-house or through partnerships, that understand the power of analytics, that are able to process data and churn it on a regular basis, but most importantly, are flexible to learn and fail fast and fail forward. Not all analytics models work. Not every algorithm will give you the right answers. In a digital world, in a world where there is lots of data, where there is lots and lots of data, there also has to be the flexibility and the openness to learn and to be open to trying new things, to test things, and to test and to be open that certain things won't work. So if I were to summarize, what does it take to really make this happen? Measure, leadership commitment, and ownership of this KPI across the entire organization rather than specific functions. And then really an openness and a mindset to try, test many things and really use the power of digital and data rather than trying to do it only yourself. Combining what we can do as humans with what analytics can throw up for us and bringing those together is what can really make the needle move. I'm going to pause here and
please carry on.
No, I was just going to say I'm going to pause here and I'd love to take some questions from the audience, or otherwise, I can talk a little bit if there's anything that you want to cover.
Yes, Ms. Jain, I'd in fact, urge you to please complete, please cover as much ground as possible because, like I said, this was a conversation we were really looking forward to. So please carry on.
Okay, great. I think there were two other points that I was keen to touch upon. There were two other points that I was keen to touch upon. I think the next one was around, the importance of friction. Every customer journey, every purchase process has multiple points of friction in it. As we go through these journeys, mapping out customer journeys, mapping out what are the different points of friction and thinking through how can we solve for them is a very important first step in solving for customer experience. Take a simple journey of somebody going, to watch a movie in a cinema. Now, I know many of us have not done that for 2 years, but we all remember what it was like. And even something, as routine as going to watch a movie in a cinema has many pain points. From deciding which movie to watch, not wanting to end up spending 3 to 4 hours watching something that you just did not that you did not enjoy. So making sure that you actually found a movie that you were going to enjoy. Finding parking at in peak time in a mall where there's a movie running. Making sure that you actually get your popcorn in time in that short window where there is an interval and everyone goes rushing out. Making sure you're able to get out of the cinema. I mean, I can go on and on. And even in something as routine as that, there are so many points of friction and so many pain points. If you go for a movie with with your kids and with elders in the family, making sure that everyone reaches their seats, gets the food that they want, that you don't miss parts of the movie trying to rush around solving for everybody's requirements, and many more things. Now, many of you are listening to me saying, yes, these are regular frictions, but we live with it because we love going for a movie. But the reality is that it's not that these are not solvable. I mean, if I look at players in different parts of the world, these have been solved. I mean, today you can book your popcorn online. You can pre-order your food, make sure it arrives at the time that you want. You can actually pre-book a parking slot so that or have a pre-book a valet service where you can where you don't need to park. You can pre-book an Uber so that you actually don't even need to have your own car, and can everything can get managed seamlessly. You can anticipate what time things are going to finish so that you can actually slip away before the crowds get and so on and so forth, right? So there are any friction, and every point of friction that exists in a customer journey is solvable. It just needs you to ask the question, how am I going to solve this, and how can I use the power of technology to really do things differently and create a different experience. And the last thing I'm going to end with, and I'd be happy to take any questions after that, is really to say that nothing is impossible. We all as we go through different journeys, as we interact with different brands and have different experiences, there are a set of experiences that we start to take for granted, and there are a set of pain points and a set of problems that we start to expect are going to be are normal and will always happen. And we always benchmark to what others are doing and make sure that as long as we're as good or better than our competitors, that we're actually offering the best consumer experience. If I were to leave you behind with one thought, I would say, don't benchmark yourself to your competitor in your own category. Really look at who is best in class in providing customer experience. Look at who's best in class in delighting a customer rather than just, solving a problem. And think about how you can solve latent problems, latent needs, and existing pain points that customers take for granted. If you are able to solve problems for them in key moments of truth, if you are able to solve for them something that they didn't even know needed to be solved, and if you then stay the course with them, put them first and care about them rather than caring about the next sale, the rest is history. You will have customers for life who will grow with you, who will market for you, advocate for you, and all you need to do is just continuously focus on making them happy, and everything else will solve for itself. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the insights, Ms. Jain. I think it was indeed the perfect way to put together what we all have been discussing at the summit over the last 2 days. By sharing your story in the opening of your keynote, I think you've clearly outlined that customer experience and good, or rather great customer experience, is not about delivering a cool feature, but it's about learning how to solve a customer problem. And in conclusion, we can concur that customer experience is today's competitive battleground, and the best way to control our customers' experience is to intentionally create it. So thank you so much for being a part of Mint CX Summit. We are really, really grateful for all of the amazing insights that you've given us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Xenia. And thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Our pleasure. And I would now take the time to thank all of you. Thank you for being present over the last 2 days and for, also sharing thoughts. All of our speakers gave us some great insights on the transition that is today taking India by storm as far as customer experience is concerned. I also want to thank Zendesk for making this summit possible. Thank you very much. And thank you to MoEngage and Gupshup for co-powering what is already a powerful 2-day of summit. We will continue these conversations through the Mint CX Conversations, which is a series of tete-a-tetes with India's leading customer-facing companies. Thank you all once again for making Mint India CX Summit a grand success. I'm Zina Fernandez signing off. Stay well, take care, and keep winning at CX.